All right, hey guys, Mr. Kyle, Myers Mathematics, and let's just jump right into it. So this is a video today. Normally I don't do video, I do like on the board and you can see what I'm doing, like a screen share kind of thing. But today I'm just dropping some info, and all of it is also going to be in the description below, so go check it out down there, on the Algebra and Geometry FSA EOCs. So what does that mean? FSA, Florida Standards Assessment. EOC just means end of course. So together it means the semester, basically the semester exams for algebra and geometry in Florida specifically. So if you're watching this and you're in a different state, it might be similar but not exactly the same. Because of Common Core, it's going to be pretty similar, but it is going to be different state by state still because, there's still some differences there. So all of that as a disclaimer. And also, I'm going to be doing algebra first and then geometry. So if you are about to take the Algebra I EOC, stick around. I'm about to drop all the facts on that first. If you're in geometry EOC, then I'll put my hands up in the air and let you know that I'm about to do the geometry part. So you can skip to that section of the video if you want to hear all the stuff about the geometry EOC. But I figured I'd do a video on both since a lot of the stuff is pretty similar, besides like what's specifically going to be on the test. So let's go ahead and jump in for Algebra FSA EOC. First big difference is that it is required as of the time of this video, May of 2021. It is required to graduate, so you have to pass the EOC itself to graduate. Whereas with geometry, you just have to, sit for it and overall just pass the class in general, which also includes the EOC. So just a little bit of a difference there. Also, another disclaimer, this is 2021, May. Each year things change, usually not by a significant amount, but you never know. So if you're watching this video at, some other year besides 2021, and Jesus hasn't come back yet, then, maybe just go ahead and check these links and make sure those links that I'm putting in the description below are still valid. FS Assessments has all the stuff that you need to, figure out all the information and stuff. So just check those links. Those links could change from year to year. So anyways, I think that's all the disclaimer stuff. Let's get into the Algebra I EOC stuff. So, as of last year, January 2020 was the most recent update, at least on the website. Algebra I is 41% of what they call algebra and modeling, which basically means like systems of equations, completing the square, domain and range, and factoring. Those are some big, heavy-hitting topics, and that's 41%, almost half, of the Algebra I EOC. Okay, the second, almost half, 40% of the Algebra I EOC is what's called functions and modeling, which is kind of what it sounds like. Functions meaning just know everything about functions, know how to do transformations of functions, know how to graph a function, know how to make an equation from the graph of a function, right? Pretty much everything to do with functions, okay? That's 40%, almost half. And so the leftover percent is just everything else that I didn't already mention that you've learned in Algebra I. So if you want to check out all the specifics there, with all the like little FSA, the maths, the assessment standards and all that crazy technical jargon, that is one of the links in the description below that you can check out. So 41% and then 40%, that's like almost the whole thing of what I just mentioned there, right? So if you didn't catch that, go back or click on the link below to get the specifics for that. Calculator. You're allowed to use a calculator, but only on the second day, and usually it's the TI-30XA, which in my opinion is complete garbage. I cannot stand that calculator. I cannot tell you how much I do not like that calculator. It's It's terrible. I hate it. I hate that calculator. It's terrible. So anyways, you can use the calculator that is on the computer itself. And there's a link to that in the description below as well. It's much nicer. It works the way all calculators should, in my opinion, which is you type it in exactly how you see it, and it spits out the answer. Imagine that. By the way, what that means is the TI-30XA, you have to type things in backwards sometimes. That's why it's really annoying. So go check out that link in the description below and play around with that calculator at least the day before the calculator section. And that's for both algebra and geometry, but I'll re-mention that when I get to the geometry stuff. So next up is the reference sheet. Okay, so for algebra, which I'm still talking about, for algebra EOC, the reference sheet is basically the same thing you've been seeing if you've been taking these tests for a while, these EOC things, or just end of semester state standardized test things. It's basically just conversions. It just gives you a bunch of conversions. All right, that's it. Nothing fancy. Any formulas that you might need to know, like the quadratic formula, or like equations of lines and stuff like that, you're not going to get any of that stuff on the Algebra I EOC. So I would recommend memorizing it. I know I said it. Memorizing stuff. Unfortunately, you have to do that in all your classes, including math. So you just got to know all that stuff. Okay? So that's all that's on the reference sheet for Algebra I EOC. Now, length is the last thing I'm going to talk about for Algebra I, and then later on geometry when I get to the second part of the video. The length is 90 minutes per session, but you are supposed to be able to take what's called, quote, half a school day, which normally comes out to roughly twice that 90. It depends. It depends on when you start the test and a lot of different factors, but you should have more than 90 minutes per section if you need it. And the specifics of that are just different depending on the school you're in and what half a day looks like and things like that. So that can get a little hairy, that number, but it should be more than 90 if you need it by a significant amount. Okay, so 90 minutes per session, that's an hour and a half per session, like minimum. Like they have to give that to you by law or whatever. There are 64 to 68 questions. So an average of 66, meaning an average of 33 questions per section. So non-calculator 33, calculator 33, also give or take like a question. Okay, and that's actually it for Algebra I EOC. So I'm going to wave up in the air. All right, this is me waving to let you know I'm on the geometry part now. Okay, so geometry. Again, disclaimer, this information might be a little bit different if you're, not in 2021 anymore. And so, just disclaimer that you might want to go to fsassessments.org, which I'll also put a link to that in the description below. So you can check that out and find some of this stuff for yourself if it's in a later year and you think that some of this information might not be as accurate anymore as I'm quoting it to you. So anyways, another disclaimer out of the way. Geometry. As of January 2020, the most recent update, 46%, like basically exactly half of the test, is on 4 things. Congruence and similarity, which kind of go hand in hand. So the side angle side, side side side, angle side angle, angle side, and hypotenuse leg. Remember those? Yeah. Similarity, which there's some formulas for those. There's side 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 similarity, angle similarity, side angle side similarity. Okay, so congruence and similarity stuff. CPCTC. Does that sound familiar? If not, you might want to look that up. All of that stuff. And then right triangles and trigonometry, which is usually 1 unit, and it's usually taught as the first unit of the second semester, aka the beginning of quarter 3, usually. Aka SOHCAHTOA, sine, cosine, tangent, that kind of stuff. Okay, so all of that I just said, 46%, which is basically half of the test. Half of the test is on all that stuff. Okay, So that's a kind of a big deal. The next large chunk, 38%, is circles, which is going to be interior, exterior, inscribed angles, geometric properties. So this would talk about like the volume formulas and surface area and all that kind of stuff, as well as like some proofs and things like that a little bit. Measurement and equations is what it's called as well, which is going to basically end up having to do with like identifying constructions, and equations has to do with a lot of different things. But basically circles and volume, like volume, surface area, area, perimeter, circle stuff. All things to do like that whole unit on circles, just that whole thing, right? All of that I just mentioned is 38%. So between those two, 46% and 38%, that's basically the whole test. Everything I did not just say. If you're like, oh wait, but what about that topic? That's part of the other, however much is left over percent. I don't feel like doing math. It's late. Okay, so you can go check that out. Again, the links to these are in the description below. Go check that out to see the exact breakdowns of those. And if you want, when you see the link, if you pull up the link, there are maths, which are like the specific standards. So if you're not sure what that stuff is, it's like maths 0.2, 0.5, 0.667, blah, 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 blah. What you do is, nobody knows what those are. Nobody's memorized all. I guarantee you that if there's like one person, if there's like one math teacher who's memorized all of those, then they are the nerd of nerds. And I feel sorry for you if you have that teacher as your teacher. But what you do is, if you want to know what one of those standards is, you just copy it and Google it, right? Google is the key to everything. You just copy the math thing and then you Google it, and then it'll pull up the description of what it is, like in mostly layman's terms. Okay. And if you're confused on any one of those math things and you want me to translate that into English for you, go ahead and put a comment in the description below. Not in the description. Put a comment in the comment section below. Not in the description below. You can't put something in the description section. And let me know what your question is on that. So that's the breakdown. Again, calculator. So I talked about this in the algebra section, but calculator for geometry, TI-30XA, in my opinion, absolute trash. If you have one, you might as well throw it away. It's garbage. It's absolute garbage. There is a calculator that they give you on the calculator section, which is usually day 2. Pretty much has to be day 2. If they switch the days, then you probably need to talk to somebody, because day 2 should be calculator section. When you get to the calculator section, you're going to have a calculator available to you on the computer. And there's actually a link to that in the description below as well. Check that out. Play around with it a little bit. It works like a calculator should work, forwards. As in, you see what you need to type in. You type it in how you see it, and it gives you the answer. Imagine that. So go check that out. Again, that's in the description below. There's also a link to the acceptable list of calculators. Good luck finding another one of those calculators on the list. I've tried. If you were able to find one of those exact calculators, let me know, because I envy you. You're amazing. So some of those other calculators on that list are supposed to work forwards like calculators should work. So if you are able to magically get your hands on one of those other calculators on the list, like one of the Casios, then you might be good to go. But yeah, so next up is the reference sheet. Geometry actually has the nicest reference sheet. It has the first page, which is the same as all the other reference sheets, like for algebra. It has all the conversion rates, which maybe are helpful or maybe not helpful. I don't know. I never really thought they were that helpful. But there could be a few questions where you're like, oh, I don't know what that is. And you could use your reference sheet to convert something to something, like feet to yards or whatever. I don't know. So that's on there. But on the second page, you have a couple other things. It has the SOHCAHTOA formulas, which means you don't need to remember that some old horse caught another horse taking oats away. It's actually not needed to know that, because those formulas are given to you. So sine equals opposite over hypotenuse, cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent equals opposite over adjacent. All of those formulas are given to you. You just have to know how to use the equations. So I would still practice that stuff. Even though it's given to you on the reference sheet, you still have to know how to use it. So practice that, but don't memorize the formulas. They're given to you on the formula sheet. Also, volume. This one's kind of a tricky one because they give you the volume they don't give you any area formulas, by the way. So surface area, regular area, circumference, you're on your own. You gotta know that stuff. If you don't know any of that stuff I just said, like circle area, trapezoid area, kite area, any of that stuff could come in handy. I would recommend just knowing all the area formulas, okay? So if you don't have those, go grab some 3x5 cards or get the free Quizlet app and just make those on there, okay? Definitely know those. But you are given 3 volume formulas, and you just need to know which one is which. The first volume formula is going to be for what I like to call recyclables, like cans and boxes. All right, so prisms and cylinders, cans and boxes. Okay, so basically if it doesn't come to a point, if it's just a can or a box, a recyclable, you're going to use the first volume formula. Volume equals capital B times H. Second one is the exact same as the first one, except it's got a 1/3 in there. 1/3 is for the pointy shapes, so cones and pyramids, which I usually just call pointies because they come to a point. And then the third one is usually pretty easy to spot. It's got a pi in it, and normally an equation with pi in it has to do with circles. This one's the volume of a sphere. It's 4/3 pi r cubed. It's for a sphere. It's got pi in it. Okay, so just remember it's got pi in it. That one's for a sphere. Okay, so think sports besides football and frisbee or whatever. So those are the 3 volume formulas, but you have to know which one is which, and you have to know how to use them. So know how to use them. So SOHCAHTOA, volume formulas, and the line equations. It actually gives you the line equations, which is pretty cool. Gives you the different equations of a line, slope formula, stuff like that. So that's not bad. I mean, they could have not given you that stuff. So it's better than nothing. But it's missing area, circumference, surface area, the circle segment and angle formulas. So like the interior angle of a circle is equal to the average of the arcs, stuff like that. So basically all the formulas that you learned in the unit on circles are not on the formula sheet. Ugh. So definitely go back to your unit on circles, and you want to remember all those formulas, unfortunately. But hey, when you're done with this, you won't need to use any of that crap for Algebra 2. So, there's a plus side to this. So, all of that stuff on there. Anything to do with factoring, law of sines and cosines, which may or may not even be on there. Factoring stuff. So like how to factor things, quadratic formula, Pythagorean theorem, anything to do with proofs. There's nothing to do with proofs on the reference / formula sheet. So you got to know proof stuff. But basically, when it comes to reasons for a proof, there's only 5 reasons. There's given, which is the stuff that's given. There's definitions. There's properties, which are sometimes also called something else. I forgot the other word, but properties. There's laws. Actually, I think laws and properties are usually used sometimes interchangeably. Laws and properties. So given, definition, laws, properties, theorems, and then postulates, which are sometimes called axioms, but usually not. They're usually just called postulates. Okay, so there's 5 things. 5 different kinds of reasons. Back that video up if you need to and go check out those things, those 5 things that I just said if you need to. But those are really the only 5 reasons, the 5 types of reasons that you'll use for a reason. So hopefully that's helpful for the drag and drop proof stuff, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be drag and drop. Okay, so I've talked a lot about what's on the formula sheet, what's not on the formula sheet. Again, last thing for geometry and last thing for this video, wrapping up here, the length is the same, the amount of questions is the same. 90 minutes per session, but you can take up to half a school day if needed per session, which is not really including any accommodations. You could have accommodations or whatever. And half a school day is a relative-ish term. It could be double that 90 minutes, but it just depends on your school. So half a normal school day, whatever that looks like. Okay, per session, there are 64 to 68 questions. So on average, 66 questions for both Algebra and Geometry EOCs. So roughly 33, give or take a question per section, non-calculator section, and then calculator section. They're split pretty much evenly there. Okay, so that is all the stuff you need to know for the Algebra and Geometry FSA EOC tests. Okay, so what do you do with all this information? Well, if you haven't checked out some of those links down there, look at some of those links, especially the calculator link. That's really helpful. Click on that calculator, mess around with it, do 3 times 4 and just play around with the calculator, get a feel for it. It's much better than the TI-30XA. Also, another thing that you need to do is take the practice test. If you haven't already in class, you can do that on fsassessments.org, and I'll have that in the description below as well. Go ahead and take that practice test. There are other videos on YouTube about like people working out all the problems. I think I'll probably also do some videos like that in the future, but for right now, not just yet. And I think that's it. So that's wrapping up the video. And as always, I'll end with a free guide. I have a guide called The 5 Math Mistakes Everyone Makes and How to Avoid Them. It's a free guide on my website, myersmathematics.com. And you can go there and grab that free guide, and it shows you the 5 math mistakes that people typically make and how you can avoid doing them. And it's just a really quick reference. You just kind of check it out once and come back to it later sometimes if you need to, but just sort of a general guide to just kind of check out and be like, oh yeah, okay, so that's what I would do if I ran into this problem. Okay, so go ahead and check that out. It's on my website, myersmathematics.com, and I hope this video has been helpful. Like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for notifications, and I will see you again in the future.